Hello and welcome. Today, we are stepping into a world frozen in time, a world of ice, snow, and endless white horizons. So, sit tight, take a deep breath, get comfortable, dim the lights, grab some popcorn, be cozy, and let's drift back, way back, all the way to the very first moment of everything. Imagine the air is crisp, your breath rises in clouds, the ground crunches beneath your feet. All around you, the wind whispers secrets of a world long past. This is the Ice Age, a time when Earth wore a coat of ice, when glaciers stretched across continents, and every step carried you into the unknown. The sun hangs low, shadows stretch across the snow. In the distance, mountains glimmer, rivers lie frozen, silent beneath the ice. And yet, life is everywhere. Giant herds roam the plains. Mammoths sweep through the frost. Bison stamp across the snow. Predators follow silently. Every creature moves with purpose. Every moment is survival. Humans walk among these giants. Small, clever, determined. They watch. They learn. They hunt. They endure. Life is harsh. Yet, life continues. Close your eyes. Feel the wind on your face. Hear the crunch of snow. Imagine the distant roar of glaciers. The world feels immense, cold, silent, but alive. We will journey together through this frozen world. From the vast mammoth steppes to hidden glaciers, from the hunter's fires to the shadow of saber-toothed cats, from frozen rivers to the first stirrings of life beneath the ice. It is a world both beautiful and dangerous, a world that shaped humans and the earth itself, a world that left footprints still visible today. And as we wander through this ice age, let your mind drift slowly. Feel the calm of a world untouched by time, a world waiting to tell its story. Before we begin, if you enjoy quiet explorations like this, click subscribe. Join our journey through time. We'll explore, we'll discover, and we'll see the Ice Age as if we were there. So, take a deep breath. Step lightly. Let the frozen wind guide you. The Ice Age is waiting. And now, we begin. The Ice Age. A time when Earth's face was different, much colder, much wilder. It did not happen all at once. It came in cycles, long stretches of ice, followed by warmer pauses. Glaciers advanced slowly, covering mountains, valleys, and plains. They moved like rivers of stone, grinding the land beneath. The world was colder. Much of North America and Europe lay buried. Huge sheets of ice stretched far and wide, sometimes miles thick. Between these frozen times came warmer periods. Seasons softened. Ice retreated. Forests and grasslands returned. Animals and humans moved in again. These cycles repeated over thousands of years. Each cold period is longer than most human lives. Each warm pause is a brief. The Ice Age shaped the land we walk on today. Mountains carved sharp by ice. Valleys wide and U-shaped. Rivers rerouted by melting glaciers. Soils enriched by rock and silt. Life had to adapt. Only the strongest, cleverest, and most resilient survived. Plants and animals learned to endure. Humans invented tools, clothing, fire, shelters. Some regions were frozen solid. Others remained habitable. Grasslands stretched where forests once stood. Animals followed the ice, migrating for food. The cold was relentless. Snow fell constantly in some areas. Wind cut across open plains. Glaciers crushed everything in their path. Yet this was not lifeless. The Ice Age teemed with life. Mammoths roamed the plains. Giant sloths moved slowly through forests. Predators lurked, stalking prey. Humans observed. They tracked animals, learned the rhythms of the land. Their survival depended on understanding the ice. The Ice Age lasted millions of years. It shaped continents, sculpted landscapes, determined migration paths, and influenced the evolution of countless species. It ended slowly. Ice sheets melted over thousands of years. Seas rose. Land bridges vanished beneath the waves. Forests expanded. The traces remain: glacial valleys, isolated boulders, sediment layers, and fossils of creatures long gone. Humans stepped into this changing world, adapted once more, learning, surviving, thriving. The Ice Age was not just a frozen past. It was the world that created the foundations of the present. So, when you look at mountains, rivers, or plains, remember the Ice Age, the slow dance of cold and warmth, the rise and retreat of glaciers, the resilience of life beneath the ice. And in the quiet of snow or the shadows of valleys, you can almost hear the whispers of that frozen world. The Ice Age was not local. It touched the entire planet, from pole to pole, from mountains to plains. Ice sheets spread like blankets. North America was buried under the Laurentide ice. Europe was covered by the Scandinavian ice. Asia is cloaked in the Siberian glaciers. These sheets were massive, miles thick in some places, moving slowly, grinding rock, shaping landscapes. The cold was extreme. Temperatures dropped far below what we feel today. Winter lasted months longer. Snow never fully melted in some regions. Yet, not all lands were frozen. Some remained open. Grasslands stretched across continents. Rivers ran, though often choked with ice melt. The southern hemisphere also felt the chill. Antarctica was a solid sheet of ice. Australia faced its own cold extremes. Giant reptiles and marsupials adapted to harsher conditions. Sea levels dropped. Water trapped in ice sheets. Coasts stretched farther than today. Land bridges appeared, connecting continents, allowing humans and animals to migrate. Some regions became deserts under cold, dry air. Others supported vast herds of herbivores. Mammoths, bison, and wild horses roamed these icy plains. Predators followed, lurking in the shadows. Even the tropics were not untouched. Mountain glaciers appeared. Highlands held pockets of ice. Rainfall patterns shifted. Life adapted wherever it could. Wind carried snow across continents. Blizzards reshaped the land daily. Drifts piled high against hills and valleys. The world became a moving, frozen landscape. The ice dictated movement. Animals migrated along safe corridors. Humans followed the herds. Survival depended on understanding these frozen routes. Rivers carved deep channels from meltwater. Lakes formed where glaciers blocked the flow. When ice walls broke, floods reshaped the land. Entire valleys vanished in hours. New landscapes emerged from the destruction. Despite the cold, life persisted. Plants survived in sheltered zones. Animals evolved to endure the extremes. Humans invented clothing, fire, and shelters. The ice tested ingenuity at every turn. Even the oceans were affected. Sea levels dropped by hundreds of feet. Coastal ecosystems shifted. Marine life adapted to changing conditions. The Ice Age was global, relentless, and vast. Every continent had its frozen stories. From North America to Europe, Asia to Australia. The cold connected all living things in its grip. Yet, this world of ice was not static. It ebbed and flowed. Warm periods gave land back. Cold periods reclaimed it. Life had to be flexible, clever, and persistent. The planet itself was alive with frozen energy. Every glacier, every snowfield, every ice shelf shaped the earth. Its legacy remains. Valleys, rivers, lakes, and soil patterns. The fingerprints of a world locked in ice. To understand the Ice Age, you must see it as a global force. Not just snow and cold, but a system that shaped every corner of Earth. A frozen canvas on which life learned to survive. Imagine a plain that never seems to end. Flat, open, stretching beyond the horizon. Snow dusts the grass in winter. In summer, the land turns golden under the pale Sunday. This was the Mammoth Steppe, a massive grassland, spanning continents, from Eastern Europe to Siberia, a world built for giants. The air is cold, crisp, and dry. Wind sweeps across the plains, carrying dust, grass seeds, and the scent of distant herds. Every step echoes in emptiness. The Mammoth Steppe was alive with movement. Grazing giants everywhere, woolly mammoths, enormous and shaggy, pushing through snow and frost. Their long, curved tusks swing with slow grace. Mastodons moved quietly among them, smaller but still formidable. Herds of bison thundered across the plains. Horses, wild and stocky, roamed in groups. Reindeer grazed in the colder reaches, their hooves scraping frost-hardened ground. Every animal, shaped by the cold, is built to endure the harsh wind. Predators were never far. Saber-toothed cats prowled quietly, muscles coiled, waiting. Dire wolves moved in packs, shadows among shadows. Even smaller predators like foxes and wolverines hunted with cunning precision. Humans entered this world cautiously. Not masters yet, but keen observers. They tracked herds, learned migration paths, studied the behavior of prey and predators alike. Every movement mattered. Life on the steppe was a rhythm. Herds grazed, predators followed, humans adapted. One mistake could mean hunger or death, yet the land was generous if you knew how to move with it. Food was abundant in cycles. Mammoths provided meat, hides, and bones. Bison supplied fat, skins, and strength. Rivers carried fish and fresh water. Every resource was critical. Seasons dictated life. Winter brought scarcity and freezing winds. Animals pressed southward or clustered in sheltered valleys. Summer brought grazing, growth, and movement. Humans timed hunts with precision, exploiting these natural rhythms. The Mammoth Steppe was more than survival. It was innovation. Humans learned to create tools for cutting meat and piercing hides. Fire became essential, a circle of warmth in the open cold. Clothing evolved, stitched from furs and layered for protection. Art emerged here too. Cave walls, bones, and tools bore marks of human imagination. Even in this harsh environment, the need to survive was created. The steppe was harsh, yes, but it was also magnificent. A landscape of scale unlike anything today. Every herd, every predator, every human contributed to a delicate balance. The Mammoth Steppe was a classroom, teaching endurance, cooperation, and respect for life. And as the ice shifted, the steppe transformed. Herds moved, humans followed. Rivers shifted, snow melted, and grasses grew anew. Every change demanded adaptation, innovation, and foresight. The Mammoth Steppe was alive. Not just a place, but a force. A frozen ecosystem that tested life, inspired creativity, and shaped survival. It was here that humans learned to endure, to hunt, and to thrive. Step onto this plain in your imagination. See the giants grazing, the hunters watching, and the wind carrying stories across endless grass. This was the heart of the Ice Age. Picture the wind biting at your face. Snow drifts high. The cold gnaws at your fingers and toes. This is the world early humans faced. Survival wasn't easy. Every day was a challenge. Shelter was scarce. Wood was rare in the treeless plains. Humans had to be inventive. Bone, tusk, and hide became building materials. Mammoth skeletons turned into frames. Animal skins stretched over them, creating huts. Cramped spaces, yes, but warm. Inside, a single fire flickered, a lifeline in the endless cold. Fire was more than warmth. It was protection. It cooked food, hardening meat and fat. It kept predators at bay. A small flame could mean the difference between life and death. Humans learned to make fire themselves. Flint and pyrite struck sparks. Tinder caught the ember. A small flame grew into a vital source of energy. They mastered fire, and in fire, they found safety, community, and hope. Clothing was another key to survival. Furs stitched with bone needles, layer upon layer to keep the wind from cutting through. Boots lined with grass and hide. Every piece is refined over generations. Every stitch, a lesson learned from cold nights and frostbitten toes. Hunting required skill and cooperation. One person alone couldn't bring down a mammoth. Groups worked together, driving herds into ambushes. Spears, stone blades, and bone tools became extensions of human ingenuity. A successful hunt fed many mouths. A failed one could mean days of hunger. Even in the harshest cold, humans created. Cave walls held paintings of bison, mammoths, and horses. Carvings and Venus figurines emerged from bone and ivory. Art was more than decoration, it was memory, teaching, and imagination. Proof that life was about more than survival. Night after night, stories passed down lessons. Around the fire, voices shared knowledge of hunting, the land, and the dangers lurking beyond. Every tale reinforced cooperation and community. Alone, humans were vulnerable. Together, they could endure. The Ice Age demanded constant vigilance. Predators like saber-toothed cats and dire wolves prowled the steppe. Even smaller creatures were threats. Fire, tools, and community allowed humans to hold their fragile place in this world. Every step was a lesson. Every tool is a response to necessity. Humans learned to shape their environment just enough to survive. Not to dominate yet, but to endure. The cold tested them. It forged resilience, creativity, and intelligence. Through fire, shelter, clothing, and teamwork, humans not only survived, they thrived. Step into the frozen world. Feel the wind, see the fires glow, and hear the stories passed from one generation to the next. This was life in the Ice Age, harsh, dangerous, and yet profoundly human. Imagine a wind so fierce it can strip the skin from your face. The snow is relentless. The cold seeps into every corner. Early humans faced this world every day. Shelter was survival. It wasn't about comfort, it was about staying alive. Where trees were scarce, humans turned to what the land offered. Bones of mammoths, tusks, and skulls became building materials. Stacked carefully, they formed frames sturdy enough to hold up hides. Huts rose from the frozen ground, small circles of warmth against the endless cold. Inside, the space was tight. Everyone huddled close. A fire crackled in the center. Its warmth reached only so far, so bodies leaned together, sharing heat. Every inch mattered. Caves offered natural protection. Walls of stone blocked the wind. Overhangs kept snow from falling inside. Early humans learned to make the most of every rock and ridge. They lined floors with layers of moss, grass, and fur. Even small adjustments could mean the difference between frostbite and survival. Fires weren't just for warmth, they were shields. The glow kept predators at bay. Sparks and smoke were carefully managed to signal danger or call others to help. A single flame could create a boundary between life and death in the frozen world. Hides were essential. Stretched and layered over frames, they blocked wind and trapped heat. Every stitch mattered. Bone needles and sinew turned raw animal skins into wearable armor against the cold. Boots lined with grass or fur are insulated against frozen ground. Humans learned to shape every piece for maximum protection. Shelters were often clustered. Small bands of humans shared structures, pooling warmth and resources. Cooperation extended survival. The cold demanded teamwork as much as fire and fur. Those who worked together endured. Those who did not perish. Even the simplest huts were lessons in ingenuity. Slopes kept snow from piling on roofs. Doorways faced away from the wind. Smoke holes allowed fire to breathe while keeping the shelter warm. Everything was carefully planned through observation, trial, and error. Some shelters combined natural features and human construction. Rocks, caves, and ridges formed the skeleton. Bones and hides became the walls and roofs. Humans learned to manipulate their environment subtly but effectively. The Ice Age was merciless. Shelter wasn't decoration. It was the first line of defense, the place where families survived nights that could have killed them. It was where food was cooked, tools repaired, and stories passed down. Every structure was a statement. We adapt. We endure. We are human. Step inside the circle of bones and hide. Feel the warmth of the fire and the protection of walls built against an unforgiving world. This was more than shelter, it was strategy, knowledge, and hope made tangible. The cold wasn't just a background. It was a force pressing in from all sides. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion were constant threats. To survive, humans had to become masters of their own protection. Clothing was their armor. Not fashion, not choice survival. They layered furs from the animals they hunted, each layer trapping warmth. Thicker furs for the body, softer furs for hands and feet. Every animal gave something. Mammoth hides for heavy insulation, deer skins for flexibility, and smaller furs for lining. Bone needles turned raw hides into functional garments. Sinew and thread held layers together tightly, keeping wind and snow out. It took skill, patience, and experience passed down over generations. Each stitch was a lesson learned the hard way in frozen winters. Boots were essential. Feet lost heat quickly. Grass, fur, and hide combined to create footwear that could last through icy plains and snowdrifts. Even the soles were carefully designed thick enough to protect from frost, but flexible enough to walk miles tracking herds. Gloves and mittens became standard, stitched tightly to prevent frostbite while leaving enough dexterity to handle tools or weapons. Hats and hoods weren't decoration, they were survival. A human without head insulation could lose heat rapidly. Layered furs over the skull, ears, and neck protected from bitter winds. Shawls and cloaks added extra warmth and could double as blankets at night. Every piece of clothing reflected adaptation. It wasn't random. It was tested in the harshest conditions. Early humans observed the cold, studied animals, and borrowed solutions from nature. The way a mammoth's fur trapped air inspired layered garments. The thick footpads of a reindeer suggested ways to protect soles and toes. Clothing also had a social function. Layering and fit allowed movement and work. Hunters could still stalk prey, wield weapons, and handle fire without being encumbered. It wasn't just warmth, it was mobility in a world that demanded it. Adaptation went beyond sewing and layering. Humans learned to waterproof hides using fat and oil. They made tight seals where wind could sneak in. They combined furs of different textures for both comfort and efficiency. Even small choices, like wrapping extra fur around wrists or ankles, could prevent frostbite. The cold was relentless, but clothing gave humans an edge. It turned a vulnerable species into a resilient one. Each garment, each boot, each stitched layer was a testament to observation, creativity, and survival instinct. Humans became not just survivors of the Ice Age, but innovators. Through clothing, they bent the cold to their needs. They learned that even in the harshest world, adaptation meant life. And in every stitched hide, in every lined boot, the story of survival was written. The Ice Age demanded respect, and humans answered not with stone alone, not with fire alone, but with the ingenuity of layered warmth. Fire was life, not just light, not just warmth, it was survival itself. Early humans depended on it. Cold nights could kill in hours. Wind and snow were merciless. A single spark could mean the difference between life and death. Fire gave warmth. It kept frostbite and hypothermia at bay. Around it, families huddled. Furs pulled tight, hands stretched toward the flames. It created a circle of safety against the endless dark. Fire cooked food. Raw meat was tough and dangerous. Cooked meat provided calories, nutrition, and energy. It softened hides, making clothing and shelter easier to work with. It hardened tools, helped shape weapons, and even cured adhesives. Fire was also a shield. Predators feared it. Saber-Tooths, cave lions, and wolves kept their distance. A blazing hearth marked a human territory. It turned vulnerability into control. Early humans didn't just keep fire alive. They made it. Sparks from flint and pyrite. Dry tinder coaxed into flames. It was a skill honed over generations. Fire became something they commanded, not something borrowed from lightning. Mastering fire meant mastery over the night. Humans extended their hours of activity. They could plan, cook, craft, and teach after sunset. Stories and knowledge passed through firelight. Hunting strategies, tool-making techniques, and survival lessons were shared. Fire shaped communities. Families gathered close, bonding over its glow. Children learned from their parents. Skills were passed down, creating continuity in a dangerous world. It wasn't just warmth, it was culture. Fire influenced movement. Camps were chosen for fuel availability. Wood, bone, and dried grass were gathered for kindling. Humans learned how to store embers safely. They carried fire across plains, never letting it die. It transformed the landscape. Controlled burning cleared areas for hunting. It signaled human presence to others. It was a tool, a guardian, and a mark of intelligence. Every spark mattered. Every flame was precious. Fire gave humans power where they had none. It was a boundary between survival and extinction. Fire also taught patience and observation. Choosing tinder, striking sparks, coaxing embers, each step required understanding, timing, and care. It was a mirror of survival itself, delicate, demanding, vital. Through fire, humans changed the Ice Age. They survived nights that would have killed the unprepared. They defended against predators. They cooked, they crafted, they learned. Fire wasn't just warmth. It was life. It was a community. It was power. It was humanity's first tool that could beat the cold and the dark. And, in every flickering flame, the story of survival burned brightly. Stone was survival. Humans shaped it with care. Every flake, every edge, had a purpose. The first tools were simple. Chipped stones for cutting meat. Flakes to scrape hides. Nothing fancy, just functional. Hunting required precision. Spears with sharpened tips. Thrown or thrust, they pierced the hides of giant herbivores. Stone made it possible. Bone and antler joined the effort. Barbs and hooks. Handles fitted with raw ingenuity. Tools became extensions of human hands. Over time, tools evolved. From basic flakes to refined blades, long, narrow points for thrusting, scrapers that smoothed hides, owls to punch holes for stitching furs. Each generation improved designs. Observation, trial, and error shaped knowledge. Successes were remembered. Failures taught lessons. Stone recorded intelligence. Hunting relied on these tools. Mammoths, bison, and horses could not be felled by hands alone. Humans needed a strategy and tools. Stone gave them reach, sharpness, and control. But tools weren't just for hunting. They shaped life itself. Scrapers made leather soft. Flakes carved wood and bone. Points mounted on spears or arrows. They were weapons and instruments. Crafting a stone tool demanded patience. Selecting the right rock, flint, chert, obsidian. Striking carefully to create a sharp edge. Too hard or too soft, and it shattered. Perfect flakes were prized. Tools spread knowledge. Hunting strategies are passed from parent to child. Skills etched in action, not in writing. Stone was memory made tangible. Humans learned to plan ahead. Which tool for which job? Spears for distance. Knives for processing. Scrapers for clothing. Each step improved survival chances. Stone tools also allowed adaptation. New environments demanded new solutions. Forests, rivers, and mountains each posed unique challenges. Humans responded with innovation. Even art requires tools. Carving bone and ivory, shaping figurines, marking cave walls. Stone enabled imagination, not just survival. Stone tools became symbols of human ingenuity. Small, sharp, and portable. They carried knowledge, skill, and survival. Without stone, humans were limited. With stone, they thrived. Every edge cut, every hole punched, every spearhead mounted, strengthened their hold on the Ice Age world. Stone was life. Stone was protection. Stone was learning. Stone was humanity's silent partner in survival. And every chip, every flake, every tool told a story of clever hands, patient minds, and a species learning to shape the world itself. Stone was strong, but bone and antler were flexible. Humans learned to use them. Every piece had a purpose. Antlers and bones were everywhere. Mammoth tusks, deer bones, and antlers. Discarded by nature, transformed by human hands. Spears were the first priority. Stone tips mounted on sturdy shafts. Bone points worked for smaller prey. Barbed tips held animals fast. A successful hunt depended on precision. Hooks followed, made from bone, carved and sharpened. For fishing in icy rivers, for snaring small game, every curve mattered, every notch counted. Needles were another breakthrough. Thin, strong, hollow, or solid, punched through hides and furs, threaded with sinew or plant fibers. Garments became warmer, tighter, and more protective. Bone and antler weren't just tools. They were instruments of survival. They let humans craft life itself, clothing, shelters, and hunting implements. Carving requires skill, striking, scraping, and shaping. One wrong move, and the piece broke. Patience was essential. Precision was survival. Needles opened new doors. Layered furs could be sewn together. Boots, gloves, and tunics kept frostbite at bay. Winter no longer had to be deadly. Antlers became handles, levers, and wedges. It could pry, split, and support. Stronger than wood in many cases. Flexible, yet durable. Perfect for harsh conditions. Bone wasn't just functional. It became art. Figurines, carved symbols, and decorations. Creativity flourished alongside survival. Even in freezing caves, imagination thrived. Tools made cooperation possible. Groups could hunt larger prey, drive herds into ambushes, coordinate attacks. Bone points and hooks multiplied their effectiveness. Humans learned efficiency. Every scrap of material had value. Nothing wasted. Bones became tools, weapons, and art. Every antler had a second life. Bone and antler tools also helped teach. Young hunters learned techniques, carving, sharpening, attaching points. Knowledge is passed from generation to generation. Skills that became tradition. Every item told a story. Where humans hunted, what they ate, how they survived, how they thrived. In the Ice Age, bone and antler were extensions of human ingenuity. Flexible, precise, essential. They bridged survival and creativity. Stone-cut, bone-shaped. Together, they allowed humans to endure, to adapt, to imagine, to conquer the frozen world. And every tool carved from bone or antler carried the legacy of clever minds learning to shape life itself. Hunting was life. Not just for food, but for survival. Every hunt mattered. Humans were small, prey was big. One mistake could mean death, so they learned to work together. Groups coordinated. They tracked herds across the steppe, observed patterns. Where bison grazed, where mammoths moved, ambushes became common. Hunters hid in the snow, waiting silently, ready to strike. Timing was everything. Spears and bone points were essential, thrown, thrust, and fixed with care. One well-aimed strike could bring down a mammoth, or wound it enough for the group to finish the job. Driving animals into traps worked too. Cliffs, narrow passes, frozen rivers. The landscape became part of the strategy. Hunters learned to read the terrain. Herds were observed for days. Movements studied, patterns remembered. Patience was survival. Rushing led to failure. Humans used distraction, noise, fire, or fake tracks. Confused prey ran into waiting hunters. Small groups became powerful forces. Risk was high. A single injury could be fatal. But the reward was enormous. One successful hunt fed an entire band. Bones for tools, hides for clothing and shelter, meat for weeks. Every hunt was a lesson. Young hunters watched, learning the rhythm of nature, the timing of the strike. Teamwork is required. Cooperation wasn't optional. Lone hunters rarely survived. Together, humans became a predator. Alone, they were prey. Hunting also required innovation. New weapons, better traps, learning from mistakes, sharpening skills over generations. Knowledge was shared around the fire, how to track, how to aim, when to retreat. Stories became survival manuals. The environment shaped the hunt. Snow, ice, and wind test skill. Blizzards could scatter prey. Frozen rivers could trap hunters. Adapting was essential. Predators competed too. Saber-Tooths, cave lions, and dire wolves. Humans had to move carefully. Hunting was not only for food, it was survival against both prey and predator. Every hunt reinforced bonds. Teams relied on each other. Trust became as important as skill. Communication could mean the difference between life and death. Hunting was not just an action. It was strategy, observation, patience, and courage. Every hunt shaped the human mind, teaching foresight, planning, and innovation. In the end, hunting made humans more than survivors. It made them adaptable, smart, and cooperative. Through every chase, every ambush, every frozen step, humans learned the lessons that fire and stone alone could not teach. And these lessons would echo through every generation, shaping the way humans moved through the Ice Age together. Tracking was survival, not just a skill, but a way of life. Humans needed to know where prey went. Every footprint, every broken branch, every bent blade of grass mattered. Herds moved with the seasons. Bison followed the grass. Mammoths moved to better grazing. Predators followed them. Humans needed to follow, too. Observation was constant. They watched from ridges, hidden in trees, waiting silently. Every movement counted. Tracks in the snow were a map. Each print told a story. Size, stride, and speed. Humans could tell age, health, and direction. A broken hoof or a wounded animal changed everything. Behavior mattered as much as movement. How animals reacted to wind. How herds grouped before storms. Where predators lingered. Humans learned the rhythm of life around them. Wind and weather were allies. Snow could preserve prints for days. Rain erased them quickly. Season dictated strategy. Tracking was not only reading animals, but also reading the land. Patterns repeated year after year. Humans memorized them. Rivers, valleys, and passes became familiar pathways. Migration routes were studied. Food supply depended on it. Signals were subtle. Broken twigs, disturbed earth, scat and tracks. Even the smell of disturbed soil mattered. Every hint helped predict the herd's next move. Tracking required patience, days of silence, following at a distance, close enough to know, far enough to stay safe. Predators lurked, and humans were prey too. Knowledge was shared around fires. Young hunters learned to identify prints, distinguish species, read the signs humans often ignore. Every lesson increased survival odds. Tracking wasn't just for hunting. It taught humans about migration cycles, seasonal changes, habitat preferences. Understanding nature became a survival manual. Tools helped. Sticks to probe footprints, knives to mark paths. Communication signals between trackers kept groups coordinated. Sometimes tracking meant waiting. Herds stopped at waterholes. Humans waited for days. Patience was a weapon. Rushing led to failure. Even predators were tracked. Knowing wolf and lion movements reduced risk. Avoided ambushes. Sometimes humans used predators' patterns to their advantage. Tracking shaped the human mind. Observation, memory, patience, strategy. Humans became part of the ecosystem, reading it carefully. Every trail left by animals was a clue, a story, a lesson. Through tracking, humans learned that survival was not brute strength alone. It was knowledge, timing, and understanding. Step by step, print by print, humans walked with the herds, following, learning, and thriving in a frozen, dangerous world. Art was more than decoration. It was communication. It was a memory. Humans in the Ice Age painted their world. Caves were galleries. Walls told stories. Mammoths, bison, and horses leapt from stone. The images were alive. Paint came from the earth. Ochre, charcoal, and minerals. Mixed with fat, water, or saliva. Applied with fingers or brushes made from hair or reeds. Handprints marked the presence. Not just a signature, a statement, I was here. A human leaving proof of life in a frozen world. Animals dominated the art. Not just prey, but teachers. Humans observed them, tracked them, hunted them. The art captured knowledge and respect. Colours were symbolic. Red for blood, black for shadows or danger, yellow for warmth or light. Each stroke carried meaning. Technique varied. Some figures were realistic, others are stylized, almost abstract. Movement captured in lines. The artist froze a moment in time. Patterns and dots appear alongside animals. Maybe maps, maybe rituals. We cannot know for sure, but their care shows thought and intention. Caves were sacred, far from daily life. Inside, humans are connected with nature and spirit. They created a link between survival and imagination. Art was shared, stories told around fires. Young ones learned from elders. Knowledge of animals, seasons, and hunting is embedded in images. Materials were chosen carefully. Ochre from riverbeds, charcoal from fires, tools carved from bone or wood. Even stones could become pigments or brushes. Humans experimented, layering colours, overlapping shapes, creating depth, movement, and drama. Some caves show repetition. The same animal was painted multiple times. Maybe practice, maybe ritual, maybe a fascination with life around them. Hand stencils show community. Everyone left a mark. Generations overlapping in one space. The cave became a living record of people. Art was survival too. A hunt is planned. A migration remembered. A warning passed. Through symbols, humans extended knowledge beyond memory. Art shaped identity. Humans became storytellers, observers, learners, creators in a harsh world. Even now, these paintings inspire awe. They connect us to Ice Age minds, to humans who endured cold, danger, and uncertainty, and still found time to observe, imagine, and record. So, the next time you see a handprint or a painted mammoth, remember, this was their voice, their knowledge, their way of leaving a legacy. If you love uncovering these frozen secrets, don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the Ice Age. Art wasn't limited to walls. Humans shaped objects. Small, portable art, carvings and figurines. Venus figurines are famous, rounded forms, exaggerated features, fertility, strength, survival. These tiny figures travelled with humans. Animals were carved too. Mammoths, bison, horses. Sometimes realistic, sometimes abstract, they reflected knowledge and admiration. Materials varied: bone, ivory, antler, and stone. Softwood too, though few survived. Tools were precise. Knives, burins, and scrapers shaped the details. Purpose is still debated. Rituals, teaching tools, or just pure creative expression? Perhaps all of them. Figurines could hold meaning in daily life. A reminder of prey, a symbol of fertility, a connection to the unseen. Size mattered. Some tiny, easy to carry. Some larger items are displayed at camp. Weight and portability reflected use. Humans painted some carvings, ochre, red, and yellow, highlighting details, adding another layer of meaning. Repetition of shapes shows intention. Patterns were not random. Every stroke, cut, and curve is deliberate, symbolic thinking at work. Animals were not only decorations, they taught. Young hunters learned shapes, movements, and behaviors. Figurines became portable lessons. Figurines could be gifts, passed from person to person, connecting communities, a shared language beyond words. Some carvings were abstract: dots, lines, and shapes. Maybe maps, maybe records of events, maybe signs humans understood instinctively. Venus figurines show survival priorities. Fertility meant continuation. Strength meant endurance. These were more than art, they were strategy. Creating figurines required patience. Hours of work for a small object. Skill is passed down generations. Every piece carried knowledge. Tools and techniques evolved. Sharp edges for precision, scrapers for smoothing, hollowed sections for detail. Portable art allowed humans to carry memory, a symbol of home, a link to ritual and community. Even in a harsh, moving world, art travelled with them. Animals and humans coexisted in these carvings, teaching, remembering, honouring, a frozen snapshot of life in the Ice Age. Even today, they speak. Venus figurines and carved mammoths tell stories of survival, creativity, and connection, of humans shaping the world and their understanding of it. These objects remind us the Ice Age was more than survival. It was human imagination. It was culture. It was the foundation of art as we know it. Night fell. The fire glowed. Smoke rose into the cold air. Humans gathered close. Stories began. Oral storytelling. A way to share wisdom. A way to survive. Hunters spoke of prey. Where herds moved. Where predators waited. When storms would strike. Young humans listened, eyes wide, bodies still. Learning the land. Learning the creatures. Fire making was taught. How to strike stones. How to catch sparks. How to feed the flame. A skill for warmth. A skill for life. Tools and weapons were passed down. Knives, spear points, and bows. Hands guided hands. Cuts practiced. Tips sharpened. Hunting strategies were shared. Ambushes, chases, traps, cooperation, and patience. Stories held warnings. Beware the ice. Beware the cliffs. Beware the night predators. Lessons written in words, not stone. Knowledge was memory. Memory of generations, of successes and failures. Every mistake became a story. Every success became a lesson. Songs accompanied some tales. Rhythms that helped remember. A melody tied to motion. To mimic a chase. To recall the migration of animals. Children learned through mimicry. Hands-on tools. Feet tracking footprints. Eyes watching the elders move. Knowledge was embodied. Stories included myth, giants of the ice, spirit animals, creatures beyond understanding. Teaching respect for the world. Teaching caution. Knowledge adapted. Every new observation is shared. A herd moved differently. A predator hunted in a new way. stories updated, evolving like the land itself. Language was alive, gestures added meaning, pointing, mimicking, demonstrating. The fire was in the classroom. The wilderness was the curriculum. Lessons were survival, not abstract, practical, immediate. Life or death depended on remembering. Even small details mattered. Which plants healed wounds? Which berries were safe? Which rivers held fish? Every detail is stored in the story. Knowledge tied humans together. A band learned as one. Cooperation became instinct. Hunting, building, surviving. The fire died. The stories lingered. Passed again the next night. And the next. And the next generation. Oral storytelling shaped culture. Culture shaped survival. Survival shaped the future. Through firelight, humans learned. Through voices, humans grew. Through memory, humans endured. Passing knowledge was more than talk. It was life itself. It was the thread connecting the past to the future. A lesson from the Ice Age that still echoes today. The cold was relentless. Snow blanketed the land. Wind cut across the plains. Humans had to adapt. Ingenuity became their weapon. Not just strength, not just numbers, but cleverness. They observed, watched animals, watched the seasons, learned patterns in migration, patterns in weather, patterns in survival. Tools evolved. Stone sharpened to perfection. Bone crafted into hooks and needles. Wood shaped for spears and digging sticks. Clothing was clever. Layered furs stitched with precision. Boots to walk across the snow. Gloves to protect hands. Hoods and capes to shield from the wind. Shelters were innovation in action. Caves offered protection. Mammoth bone structures created space. Hides stretched over frameworks. Fires inside kept warmth. Humans experimented, tried one design, then another. Successes were repeated. Failures became lessons. Observation turned into invention. Noticing a bird's nest, copying its structure, watching a river flow, learning where fish gather. Experience taught efficiency, how to store food for winter, how to make fire last longer, how to track prey more effectively. They combined ideas, stone and bone, wood and sinew, creating tools that no single material could achieve alone. Innovation was shared, around the fire, by word of mouth, through demonstration. Skills are passed from elder to child. Adaptation was constant. Ice receded, forests grew, animals changed, humans adjusted, always learning, always improving. They understood risk. What works in calm weather fails in storms. What works for one animal fails for another. They tested, they observed, they refined. Problem solving was survival. A broken tool could mean hunger. A failed shelter could mean frostbite. Every invention had a purpose. Ingenuity went beyond survival. It shaped culture. It shaped the community. People bonded by shared solutions, by clever ideas, by tools that worked. Even small improvements mattered. A better bowstring, a sharper spear tip, a warmer fur lining. Over generations, ingenuity accumulated. Knowledge built upon knowledge. Observations turned into innovations. Innovations became tradition. Humans became architects of their environment, not by moving mountains, but by learning the land, by shaping it with tools, clothing, and shelters. By observing, experimenting, and sharing, humans thrived. The ice could not defeat them. The snow could not stop them. They learned to turn the harsh world into an opportunity. Ingenuity was survival. Ingenuity was life. Ingenuity was the thread that carried humanity from frozen plains to thriving communities. Humans were not alone. Across the icy plains, another group walked the land. Neanderthals. Stocky, strong, adapted to cold, masters of survival in their own right. Sometimes paths crossed. Near rivers, at caves. On hunting grounds, it wasn't always friendly. Competition for food was real. Hunting the same herds, sharing the same shelters, conflict sometimes erupted. But conflict wasn't the whole story. Evidence suggests cooperation too. Knowledge exchanged, techniques shared, stone tools and fire methods passed between groups. Humans and Neanderthals observed each other, learning subtle tricks, fire management, tracking animals, shelter construction, clothing techniques for extreme cold. There were also signs of cultural influence, ornaments, symbolic objects, perhaps ideas of art or ritual travelled between them. Survival was a common goal. Neanderthals were powerful. Humans were clever. Together, they sometimes benefited from each other's strengths. Genetics tells a story. Evidence of interbreeding exists. Small fragments of DNA are carried forward. Hints that humans and Neanderthals weren't entirely separate. Life in the Ice Age was harsh. Food was scarce in winter. Predators prowled the land. Every advantage mattered. Learning from neighbours could be the difference between life and death. Interactions varied by place and time. Some regions saw more sharing. Others are more rivalrous. The landscape and climate shaped relationships as much as people did. Neanderthals knew the land well. Humans learned quickly from experience. Both adapted strategies for hunting big game. Both built shelters against the bitter cold. Fires might have been shared. Hunting grounds negotiated. Tools borrowed or imitated. Even simple gestures could mean survival. Over generations, humans eventually became dominant. Neanderthals declined. Reasons remain debated. Climate, competition, or integration. But their presence influenced early humans profoundly. The legacy of coexistence is still with us. DNA traces, shared techniques, lessons learned in cold landscapes that shaped human ingenuity. Humans weren't just surviving the Ice Age. They were learning, adapting, and interacting with every creature, including fellow humans. Neanderthals were a mirror of human possibility. Strong, resilient, clever in their own way. By understanding them, humans became stronger, smarter, better equipped to face the frozen world. The Ice Age was a classroom. Neanderthals were both classmates and teachers. Life demanded observation, cooperation when possible, competition when necessary. In that balance, humans honed the skills that would carry them forward. The story of humans and Neanderthals is a story of survival, adaptation, and shared evolution. It is a reminder that in the harshest landscapes, learning from others, whether species or kin, can make all the difference. The Ice Age was a world of giants, not just herbivores. Predators ruled the hunt. Saber-toothed cats, muscular, stealthy, teeth like curved daggers, built to ambush. A single strike could take down a mammoth calf or bison. They didn't chase. They waited, hidden in shadows. Timing was everything. Cave lions prowled too, larger than modern lions, powerful forelimbs, keen eyesight in dim light. They hunted in small groups, stalking across frozen plains. One mistake for prey could be fatal. Dire wolves were relentless. Pack hunters. Coordinated attacks. Their jaws could crush bone with ease, following herds for miles. Endurance mattered as much as strength. Together, they dominated the steppe. Wolverines, small but fierce. Solitary hunters and scavengers. No prey was too large, no carcass too dangerous. They cleaned up what the giants left behind. Tenacious survivors of the harsh cold. Raptors soared above. Vultures and birds of prey, eyes sharp, watching from the sky, waiting for weakness. A hunt above and below. Nothing escaped their gaze. Predators shaped the land. Herds adapted, learning patterns of danger. Humans learned too, observing, avoiding, and sometimes confronting. The balance of life depended on predator and prey. Every hunt was high stakes. A single mistake could mean injury or death. Predators were more than threats. They were teachers. Every footprint in the snow told a story. Every stalk, every ambush revealed strategies for survival. Predators thrived on abundance. The mammoth steppe provided food and opportunity. But winters were harsh. Hunger drove the fiercest behavior. Even the strongest struggled. Predators weren't mindless killers. They had patterns, territories, and social structures. Saber-Tooths used stealth. Dire wolves used teamwork. Lions combined strength and patience. Humans adapted around them. Fire, tools, traps, and cooperation became essential. Respect and fear guided survival. Predators defined the Ice Age world as much as the cold did. Some predators disappeared with the Ice Age. Their prey vanished. Habitat changed. Only echoes remain in fossils and bones. But during the Ice Age, they were the rulers of the frozen plains. They were fast, cunning, and relentless. Every move of prey and predator shaped the ecosystem. Humans learned lessons from every encounter. Survival was a dance with teeth and claws, with patience and speed. The predators of the Ice Age were fearsome, and in their shadows, life adapted. The frozen world demanded strength, cunning, and respect. It was dangerous. It was beautiful. It was alive. Predators ruled the Ice Age. But how they hunted was as fascinating as what they hunted. Saber-toothed cats waited in silence. Muscles coiled like springs. They used stealth, not speed. One sudden strike, teeth sinking into flesh. Patience was key. A failed ambush could mean starvation. Cave lions were hunters of skill. They studied prey, stalked through snow and tall grass. They timed attacks to the weakest moment. A stumble, a lagging calf, and the kill was theirs. Sometimes hunting alone, sometimes in small groups. Dire wolves relied on numbers. Packs moved with coordination. Each member had a role: flanking, chasing, isolating the target. Communication mattered. A single howl could signal strategy. Teamwork turned strength into efficiency. They could chase prey for miles, testing endurance. Wolverines were solitary hunters, small but fearless. They tracked weakened animals, clever, opportunistic. No risk was too great. They scavenged, but never wasted energy. Every movement had a purpose. Even Ice Age birds joined the hunt. Raptors circled high above. Spotting weakness from the sky, they struck quickly, diving with precision. Scavengers followed predators. Nothing went unused. Predators adapted to conditions. Snow, wind, and freezing temperatures shaped their techniques. Stealth became harder in open plains. Speed mattered more. Ice-covered rivers slowed prey. Predators used terrain to their advantage. Hunting wasn't just about killing. It was survival, learning, and balance. Predators followed migration patterns, studied habits of mammoths, bison, and horses. They became masters of timing. Every season brought different challenges. Pack coordination was a lesson in strategy. Alpha individuals led attacks. Younger or weaker members assisted, learned, and waited. Communication through gestures, growls, and body language. Every hunt reinforced social bonds. Ambushes were art. Predators hid in shadows or behind terrain. They anticipated prey behavior. One wrong move from prey meant capture. One misstep from a predator meant starvation. Humans watched, learned, and adapted. They studied predator tactics for hunting. Fire, traps, and tools became ways to level the playing field. Respect and fear guided human survival. Predator behavior shaped the Ice Age ecosystem. It dictated migration, feeding patterns, and herd structure. It influenced human strategies. It defined life and death on frozen plains. Every stalk, every chase, every strike told a story of survival, cunning, and balance. The Ice Age was frozen, harsh, and merciless. But predators thrived, and, in watching them, we learn the art of life under extreme conditions. Humans were not the only hunters. The Ice Age was full of predators, and they saw humans as both competition and potential prey. Avoidance was the first rule. Early humans learned the habits of saber-toothed cats, cave lions, and dire wolves. They tracked predators from a distance, noting their territories. One wrong step could be deadly. Humans moved carefully through frozen landscapes. They avoided dense predator zones when possible. They used early warning signs, broken branches, tracks in snow, distant growls. Observation became a survival skill. Competition for food was constant. Predators hunted the same herbivores humans depended on. Mammoths, bison, horses, all valuable. Humans had to plan hunts carefully. Timing and coordination mattered. Humans learned from predators. They studied pack tactics and ambush strategies. They noticed which animals were vulnerable and when. These lessons shaped their own hunting techniques. Fire became a key tool for both protection and advantage. Caves offered shelter from predators. Humans fortified their camps. They chose locations with clear sightlines. Natural barriers, like cliffs or rivers, became shields. The first warning systems emerged. Sometimes humans and predators coexisted closely. Scavenging brought them into contact. Wolves and humans both followed herds, sometimes circling the same kill. Tension was constant, but it was also a learning ground. Humans learned patience and observation, and predators learned caution. Weapons changed the balance. Spears, bows, and traps gave humans an edge. They could hunt at a distance, reducing direct risk. This allowed humans to compete with predators rather than flee. Efficiency became survival. Humans formed bands for protection. Cooperation increased their odds against large predators. Fire, noise, and coordinated defense deterred attacks. Bands shared knowledge about predator behavior. Every member became a guardian and a teacher. Risk was a constant companion. Every hunt brought opportunity and danger. A single encounter could end a life or feed a group. Humans weighed risk against reward. Decision-making became instinctive and sharp. Over time, humans shaped the predator landscape. Their presence influenced hunting patterns. Some predator populations declined. Others adapted, shifting diets or hunting methods. The dynamic was a subtle but powerful form of ecosystem engineering. Humans survived not by dominance alone. They survived by learning, observing, and adapting. They respected predators, understood them, and used that knowledge. Survival depended on balance. The Ice Age was a dance of predators and humans. Each interaction taught caution, strategy, and ingenuity. Through avoidance, competition, and clever survival, humans endured. And in the shadow of mighty predators, they honed the skills that would define our species. The Ice Age was a world of giants. Herbivores roamed the frozen plains in staggering numbers. Mammoths, with long curved tusks and shaggy coats, were kings of the steppe. Their massive bodies trampled the grasslands, shaping the land as they moved. Woolly rhinoceroses were armored tanks, thick hides, horns that could pierce threats, and a bulk built for cold survival. They grazed alongside mammoths, moving in slow, powerful herds. Together, these giants created an ecosystem that supported life in harsh climates. Bison roamed in dense herds. Their hooves churned frozen soil, turning it into fertile patches over time. They were fast, alert, and essential prey for predators and for humans. Their migrations were seasonal, following grass and shelter across vast distances. Muskoxen survived on tundra extremes. Shaggy coats, thick underfur, and compact forms helped them withstand icy winds. They clustered tightly, defending themselves from predators in circular formations. Their resilience was a lesson in adaptation for all creatures sharing the steppe. Giant ground sloths moved slowly but powerfully. They fed on shrubs, leaves, and low vegetation, shaping forests as they foraged. Their sheer size deterred most predators, and their footprints left lasting impressions on soft soil. These mega herbivores were not just animals, they were ecosystem engineers. Mammoths pushed trees aside, maintaining open grasslands. Bison grazed, fertilized the land, and created paths through snow and brush. Woolly rhinoceroses shaped the terrain with their massive bodies. Every step of a giant herbivore rippled through the Ice Age world. Humans observed these giants closely. Hunting strategies depended on understanding their behavior. Mammoths traveled predictable routes. Bison moved in tight formations. Sloths and muskoxen had patterns that could be exploited or avoided. The giants also dictated predator behavior. Saber-toothed cats and dire wolves followed the herds. Predators hunted the weak, the young, or the isolated. Mega herbivores shaped the flow of the entire food web. Season after season, year after year, they endured. Yet the end of the Ice Age was coming. Shrinking grasslands, advancing forests, and human hunting pressured these giants. One by one, species declined, leaving only fragments of their once vast populations. But in their time, mega herbivores were monumental. They defined the Ice Age landscape, the rhythm of life, and the survival strategies of humans. Every tusk, horn, and hoof carried the story of endurance and adaptation. They were giants, not only in size, but in the role they played in the frozen world. To imagine the Ice Age is to imagine herds of mammoths and bison stretching beyond the horizon. To see muskoxen clustered against the wind, sloths reshaping forests. They were the foundation of a world both harsh and magnificent, a world that humans learned to navigate, survive in, and eventually inherit. The Ice Age was not the same everywhere. Different continents hosted their own giants. Australia had its unique cast of marsupials. Giant kangaroos bounded across open plains. Marsupial lions stalked the shadows. Diprotodons, enormous wombat-like creatures, grazed in herds. Thylacoleo, a carnivorous marsupial, ruled with sharp claws. North and South America had a mix of giants too. Mammoths roamed the northern tundra. Giant ground sloths fed on forests in the south. Saber-toothed cats prowled every continent. Glyptodons, huge armadillo-like tanks, carried armor everywhere. American lions and dire wolves hunted the plains. Bison and camels migrated across open grasslands. Europe had its own signature species. Woolly rhinoceroses grazed the steppe. Red deer and reindeer roamed forests and plains. Cave bears hibernated in deep caves. Humans shared this land with predators like cave lions and wolves. The landscape was a patchwork of tundra, steppe, and forest. Asia stretched from frozen Siberia to temperate zones. Woolly mammoths marched across the northern plains. Elk and wild horses grazed in the valleys. Predators like snow leopards and cave hyenas hunted. Humans followed herds, learning the patterns of survival. Even the oceans felt the Ice Age's touch. Marine mammals like the Steller sea cow grazed kelp beds. Sharks and other predators patrolled deeper waters. Coastal zones became vital hunting grounds for humans. Rising and falling sea levels exposed or drowned land bridges. These shifts affected animal migrations and human travel. Each region demanded adaptation. Species evolved to survive local climates. Australian marsupials were unique. No other continent had them. North American bison and mammoths had to endure extreme cold. European herbivores faced harsh winters and predator pressure. Humans adapted differently too. Their tools, clothing, and hunting methods varied by region. This diversity created a world of contrasts. Ice sheets dominated the north. Tropical zones in the south remained relatively warm. Grasslands stretched across Eurasia. Dense forests covered parts of Europe and Asia. Each ecosystem had its own rhythm and rules. Humans observed, learned, and survived. They tracked the differences between regions. A mammoth herd in Siberia behaved differently from one in North America. Bison in Europe moved in smaller groups. Predators hunted with unique strategies depending on the land. Regional diversity defined the Ice Age. It made survival a challenge. It shaped the evolution of both animals and humans. It created a world of giants, hunters, and landscapes unlike any today. Every continent had its story, its giants, its dangers. The Ice Age was global, but it was also deeply local. Animals of the Ice Age were built for extremes. The cold was relentless. Survival demanded innovation. Thick fur was a must. Mammoths wore long, shaggy coats. Underneath, a dense layer of short hair trapped warmth. Woolly rhinoceroses had fur that bristled against the wind. Even small creatures, like lemmings, developed thick pelts. Size mattered too. Large bodies conserve heat. Mammoths towered over humans, their bulk protecting them from the cold. Bison and muskoxen grew thick muscles and fat layers. Giants were better insulated. They could survive longer in freezing winds and snow. Behavior helped survival. Herding was common. Massive groups of mammoths moved together. Bison formed tight circles to protect calves from predators. Predators also worked together. Wolves hunted in coordinated packs. Even saber-toothed cats sometimes teamed up. Migration was key. Animals followed food and warmth. Herds moved seasonally across the steppe. Elk and reindeer journeyed long distances. Marine life adapted too. Seals and whales migrated with ice edges. Sharks patrolled changing coastlines for prey. Diet shaped adaptation. Herbivores grazed tough grasses. Mammoths and bison could digest fibrous plants. Sloths and kangaroos ate shrubs and leaves. Predators adapted to hunt specific prey. Dire wolves were strong enough to take down mammoths. Snow leopards in Asia learned to navigate cliffs for hunting. Physical features reflected survival needs. Thick tails, fat deposits, and rounded ears reduced heat loss. Claws and teeth evolved for both defense and feeding. Giant sloths had long claws to reach high foliage. Horses and camels developed sturdy hooves for icy ground. Social behavior mattered. Animals watched one another for danger. Herds provided warmth and protection. Young learned from elders. Knowledge of migration routes is passed down through generations. Even predators had social learning. Coordinated hunting increased chances of success. Reproduction is adapted to the climate too. Mammoths timed births for spring. Calves survived the winter more easily. Some species slowed reproduction during harsh periods. Others developed fast growth to reach maturity quickly. Ice Age fauna mastered their environment. They balanced heat retention, food acquisition, and predator avoidance. Each adaptation increased survival odds. Yet even with these advantages, change was coming. Climate shifts and human arrival would test them. Not all would survive, but for tens of thousands of years, these strategies kept them alive. The Ice Age was a crucible of adaptation. Every fur, every fat layer, every herd was a response to survival. Life endured by learning, evolving, and cooperating. Animals were not just surviving, they were thriving against impossible odds. The frozen world shaped them as much as they shaped it. The oceans were different in the Ice Age. Sea levels were much lower, vast coastlines were exposed, land bridges appeared. Humans walked where water now flows. Animals followed the same paths. Marine mammals thrived. Steller's sea cows grazed in shallow waters. They were enormous, slow, and peaceful. Seals and walruses roamed icy shores. Whales migrated along frozen coastlines. Food was plentiful, but dangers were everywhere. Sharks ruled deeper waters. Massive teeth cut through prey. They adapted to colder seas. Killer whales hunt in pods. Even the oceans were extreme. Ice shaped the coastlines. Glaciers pressed into the seas. Fjords and inlets were carved by ice. New bays formed when the ice melted. Rivers poured into oceans, carrying silt. Currents shifted with changing temperatures. Humans exploited the coast. Fishing became possible. Shellfish were abundant. Seals provided meat, fat, and hides. Whale bones became tools and shelter materials. Coastal hunting offered a steady supply of food. Coral and plant life adapted to. Cold water species spread south. Seaweeds grew along rocky shores. Kelp forests provided shelter for fish. The food chain thrived, even under freezing conditions. Migration shaped ocean life. Animals followed plankton blooms. Seals moved to open water for hunting. Whales timed their births to seasons. Humans learned these patterns. Observing the oceans was survival. Icebergs floated silently. They were hazards and landmarks. Carving glaciers sent massive chunks into the sea. Ships of the Ice Age, well, not humans, watched and avoided. Currents around icebergs were dangerous. Seasonal changes were dramatic. Winters pushed ice sheets into the sea. Summers opened passages for fish and mammals. Humans adapted by following tides and prey. Coastal camps grew in importance. Rivers fed the oceans. Meltwater carried nutrients. Fish and birds thrived along these corridors. Humans hunted and gathered in these fertile areas. The interaction of land and sea created opportunity. Even small islands mattered. They became refuges for animals. Seals rested, birds nested. Humans learned to navigate them. The Ice Age oceans were alive, full of motion, danger, and resources. They shaped human culture and survival. Every change in sea level mattered. Every shift in currents affected life. Oceans were not just water, they were highways, hunting grounds, and life sources. Life above and below the surface depended on adaptation. Marine mammals evolved for cold. Humans learned to exploit resources. The oceans mirrored the extremes of the frozen world. They were vast, alive, and full of lessons. The Ice Age was a world of extremes. Winters were long. They bit through clothing and shelter. The wind cut across open plains. Snow covered the ground for months. Temperatures could plummet far below freezing. Rivers and lakes froze solid. Animals huddled together. Humans sought shelter in caves and huts. Fire was a lifeline. Food became scarce in winter. Herbivores struggled to find grass beneath the snow. Predators followed their prey closely. Hunting became dangerous and unpredictable. One failed hunt could mean starvation. Humans adapted. They stored food where possible. They moved seasonally to follow the game. They created insulated clothing. Fur, hide, and layered garments became essential. Shelter mattered more than ever. Caves offered protection from wind and snow. Mammoth bone huts were insulated with hides. Even small fires inside structures provided warmth. Every precaution mattered. Short summers brought relief. Plants grew quickly in the thaw. Grasses and berries appeared. Rivers melted, opening access to fish. Animals grazed, multiplied, and prepared for the next winter. Humans intensified hunting in summer. Herds were easier to track. Fishing and gathering became productive. Summer stockpiles supported winter survival. It was a delicate balance. Seasonal changes also affected migration. Animals moved north and south. Birds returned briefly to breed. Humans followed their prey. Observing nature became critical. The land itself changed with the seasons. Snowdrifts blocked paths. Glacial rivers swelled with meltwater. Icebergs drifted along coasts. Navigation requires skill and patience. Even the oceans reflected the extremes. Cold seas froze at the edges. Marine mammals migrated or huddled near open water. Humans hunted along newly exposed shorelines. Resources appeared and vanished with the seasons. Life was relentless. Every day demanded adaptation. Every winter tests endurance. Every summer offered a brief reprieve. The Ice Age was a world without compromise. Humans learned patience and timing. They observed animal behavior. They planned hunts around migration and breeding. They stored food and firewood carefully. Survival depended on reading the land. Predators also faced these cycles. Hunger sharpened their instincts. They attacked weaker animals. Humans competed and defended. The season dictated every interaction. Even plants followed the rhythm. Mosses, grasses, and hardy shrubs flourished in brief summers. They vanished under deep snow in winter. Their cycle defined the grazing patterns of herbivores. Life moved to the beat of the frozen calendar. The Ice Age was harsh and beautiful. Winters tested life to its limits. Summers offered brief abundance. Humans, animals, and plants adapted to extremes. It was a world of survival, timing, and resilience. Glaciers were not silent. They moved slowly, grinding rock beneath. As they melted, water poured forth. Rivers burst from ice edges. They carved valleys and reshaped the land. Meltwater carried enormous power. It transported rocks, boulders, and silt. Floods could appear suddenly. Entire landscapes could change in hours. Human settlements had to adapt quickly. Glacial rivers cut deep channels. Some rivers became the foundations of modern waterways. Others disappeared as ice retreated. Every river told a story of frozen weight and thaw. Each bend marked ice's ancient presence. Silt and sediment travelled far. Glacial rivers left fertile plains. These deposits nourished the first plant growth. Future farms would thrive on this soil. Even today, the legacy of ice-rich rivers remains. Floods were terrifying. Glacial lakes formed behind ice walls. Water pressure grew. Then, ice walls broke. Rivers surged with unstoppable force. The Laurentide ice sheet in North America held enormous lakes. Lake Agassiz was larger than all the Great Lakes combined. For centuries, it remained trapped. When the ice failed, water exploded outward. Valleys drowned. Rivers transformed into raging torrents. Similar events occurred in Europe. Ice-dammed lakes released sudden floods. Rivers shifted course dramatically. Plains were scoured. New channels formed. The landscape was constantly reborn. Humans witnessed these forces. They moved along riverbanks. They adapted to new waterways. They fished, hunted, and followed animal paths. Rivers dictated movement and survival. Even after glaciers receded, rivers carried life. Meltwater nourished plants. It attracted animals to the banks. Humans settled near these freshwater corridors. Civilizations would later grow alongside them. The oceans responded too. Rivers filled seas with sediment. Coastlines shifted inland. New bays and estuaries appeared. Marine life followed the changes. Glacial rivers were both a danger and a gift. They destroyed paths and settlements. They left fertile soil for future generations. They carved valleys and shaped mountains. Their force was immense, but life endured. Every flowing river told the story of ice. It whispered of frozen landscapes. It hinted at megafauna that once roamed nearby. It marked human adaptation over millennia. It was the lifeblood of an ever-changing Ice Age world. Meltwater rivers shaped not just land, but survival. They created corridors for animals and humans alike. They were unpredictable, powerful, and transformative. Without them, the world of the Ice Age would have been unrecognizable. These rivers remain today. They carry the legacy of ice. Their valleys, silt, and sediments are evidence of the frozen past. They remind us how dynamic Earth can be. And if you pause to look closely, you can still hear the whispers of meltwater. Don't forget to subscribe for more journeys through the frozen past as we continue to explore the Ice Age world. The glaciers were immense. They covered continents like white blankets. For thousands of years, they pressed down on the land. Slowly, Imperceptibly, the ice began to move back. The retreat was not sudden. It happened in fits and starts. Some years brought warmth. Snow melted slightly. Edges of glaciers softened. Meltwater trickled down in streams. Valleys carved by ice are filled with water. Lakes appeared where ice had blocked rivers. Some drained suddenly in massive floods. Others lingered for centuries, shaping the land. The landscape changed with every step. Barren rocks emerged, untouched by sunlight for millennia. Mosses crept in first, tiny green threads on grey stone. Then grasses followed, their roots holding fresh soil. Herds of bison and mammoths moved in, grazing on new growth. Glaciers left behind their signature. U-shaped valleys, broad and deep, marked their paths. Sheer cliffs and flat valley floors spoke of grinding ice. Solitary boulders, carried hundreds of miles, now rested quietly. These glacial erratics were monuments to ice's journey. Humans followed the retreat. They tracked rivers and hunted along edges. They discovered lands freed from ice after generations of waiting. Every season brought new opportunities and dangers. Survival demanded constant adaptation, yet retreat was not steady. Cold periods returned briefly. Glaciers surged forward again. Rivers reversed course. Humans and animals had to navigate shifting landscapes. As ice withdrew, forests advanced. Pioneer trees like birch and pine took root first. Soon, oaks and elms spread northward. Open plains turned into shaded woodlands. Herds of smaller animals replaced the giants of the steppe. Glacial retreat reshaped the oceans too. Sea levels rose as ice melted. Coastlines shifted, swallowing land bridges. Human migration routes changed. Marine life adapted to new bays and estuaries. Rivers, born of melting glaciers, carried nutrients. They fertilized the soil for plants. Wetlands formed, attracting birds and fish. Life flourished in these new corridors. Humans settled, hunting and gathering along the shores. The glacier's slow retreat was a lesson in transformation. What seemed permanent vanished gradually. Valleys, lakes, and rivers evolved. Life adapted, finding new ways forward. The Ice Age world slowly gave way to the landscapes we know today. Even now, traces remain. Glacial valleys, boulders, and lakes mark their presence. The Earth still remembers the weight of ice. The retreat shaped rivers, forests, and plains. It set the stage for human civilization to rise. The Ice Age ended, but its impact persists. Every hill, every river, every fertile plain tells the story. The retreat of glaciers was slow, yet unstoppable. It transformed a frozen world into one teeming with life, and humanity moved forward, guided by the paths carved by ice. Just as the ice seemed to retreat for good, the cold returned. It was sudden. The world plunged back into near-glacial conditions. Scientists call this the Younger Dryas. It happened roughly 12,000 years ago. Summers shortened. Snow lingered longer. Rivers slowed, partially frozen. Grasslands withered under frost. Animals struggled to find food. Mammoths and bison faced shrinking pastures. Predators followed herds, desperate for survival. Humans had to adapt quickly. Hunting became harder. Shelter and fire were life-saving again. The cold was fierce, but temporary. It lasted over 1,000 years. A brief pause in warming, yet brutal. Ice sheets surged forward in some regions. Valleys, once freed from ice, became frozen again. Rivers flooded as glaciers melted and then advanced. Lakes expanded in basins blocked by ice. Communities near these waters had to relocate. Humans learned resilience in the face of unpredictability. Every season could bring life or death. Vegetation suffered. Forests that had begun creeping north retreated. Grasslands froze beneath layers of frost. The ecosystem teetered, fragile and tense. Animals moved or died, following what little food remained. Yet life persisted. Humans huddled in caves and mammoth bone shelters. They wore thicker furs, layered clothing, and insulated boots. Fire became a constant companion. Hunting strategies shifted towards smaller, more reliable prey. The younger Dryas tested ingenuity. Groups cooperated, shared knowledge, and tracked scarce herds. Observing weather and animal behavior was critical. Each survival skill mattered more than ever. The cold reminded humans how tightly life is tied to climate. When the younger Dryas ended, the warmth returned. Glaciers finally retreated for good. Rivers surged with meltwater. Land opened for plants, animals, and humans alike. The Ice Age world gradually transformed into one we would recognize today. But the memory of the cold lingered. It left marks on the land and in the DNA of survivors. Animals adapted to rapid shifts. Humans carried lessons about fire, tools, and cooperation. Resilience became part of the species' story. The younger Dryas was a reminder. Even when the ice seems gone, the world can change fast. It shaped the migration, hunting, and settlement patterns of early humans. It influenced which species survived and which disappeared. It was the Ice Age's final gasp before the modern era began. Through this freeze, humans learned more than survival. They learned observation, adaptation, and innovation. They became prepared for a world that would never stay still. The land healed slowly, but life pressed forward. And from this harsh, frozen lesson, civilization would eventually rise. As the glaciers melted, water collected in massive lakes. One of the largest was Lake Agassiz in North America. It was bigger than all the Great Lakes combined. For centuries, it sat trapped by ice and land. Its walls held back unimaginable power. Ice is strong but not permanent. Eventually, the barriers gave way. Water poured out in catastrophic floods. Entire valleys were submerged in hours. Rivers that were small became raging torrents. Boulders, sediment, and debris were swept along. Land was carved in ways humans could hardly imagine. The landscape changed overnight. New channels were cut. Old ones disappeared. These floods were not isolated. Across the globe, similar events occurred. Europe, Siberia, and Asia saw lakes bursting free. Each released a torrent that reshaped the land. Floodwaters spread far beyond the ice margins. Humans living nearby faced sudden danger. Camps were swept away. Hunting grounds vanished beneath rushing water. Survival meant moving quickly. Observation and knowledge were key. Yet floods also created opportunity. They left fertile soil behind. Silt and sediment-enriched plains. New river valleys emerged. Fresh water became more accessible. Animals adapted too. Herds moved to higher ground. Predators followed prey into new territories. Life adjusted to these rapid changes. The Ice Age world was unpredictable. Lake Agassiz is just one example. Smaller glacial lakes dotted the landscapes. Some drained slowly, shaping rivers over centuries. Others vanished quickly, leaving dry basins behind. Each had a story to tell about ice and water. In North America, floods helped form the Mississippi River system. In the Pacific Northwest, the Columbia River Gorge was shaped by repeated outbursts. In Europe, rivers were redirected, carving new paths through the land. Siberian plains, once covered by lakes, were drained by sudden ice failures. The floods were violent but transformative. They erased old landscapes and made way for new ones. Humans and animals alike had to be flexible. The land itself was alive, responding to the retreat of ice. Even today, evidence of these floods remains. Deep channels, polished rocks, and scattered boulders mark the paths of water. The contours of river valleys tell a story of ancient power. Fertile plains and wetlands, on which we rely, grew from these events. The Ice Age floods shaped the Earth we know today. The lesson is clear. Ice may retreat slowly, but when it moves, it can unleash forces beyond comprehension. Glacial lakes were both a danger and a blessing. They reshaped ecosystems, created new opportunities, and tested human resilience. From these floods, life learned to endure, adapt, and thrive. As the ice receded, the world began to change. Grasslands shrank, forests spread, trees crept northward, reclaiming land once open and cold. Birch and pine were first hardy pioneers in poor soil. Then came oaks, elm, and other broadleaf trees. Within a few thousand years, dense woodlands replaced endless plains. Animals faced new challenges. Grazers like mammoths and bison had fewer open spaces. Their food supply dwindled. Some migrated. Some adapted to smaller ranges. Others vanished. Predators followed the prey. Saber-toothed cats and dire wolves struggled. Hunting strategies that worked on the steppe failed in forests. Some shifted to smaller prey. Others disappeared completely. Humans adapted too, no longer tracking vast herds across open plains. They hunted forest game. They crafted bows and arrows for stealth. They learned the rhythms of the shaded world. Shelters changed. New tools appeared for cutting wood and processing smaller animals. Rivers and lakes became lifelines. Melting glaciers filled valleys with water. Fish returned to streams. Birds nested along the shores. Wetlands formed, attracting new wildlife. The land became greener, richer, and more complex. The ecosystem shifted in layers. Soil developed under the canopy. Plants grew in diversity. Fungi and insects flourished. Small mammals and birds thrived in niches that the open steppe never offered. Even the oceans felt the transformation. Rising waters drowned coastal plains. New bays and estuaries formed. Marine life adapted to changing shorelines. Humans found abundant food along coasts. Fish, shellfish, and waterfowl. The pace of seasons softened. Long winters gave way to gentler cold. Springs stretched. Summers were milder. Life adjusted to a more balanced rhythm. The extreme cycles of the Ice Age faded. Migration patterns shifted. Herds no longer roamed endlessly. Humans settled in fertile valleys and near lakes. They planted seeds, managed resources, and stayed longer in one place. Civilization began to take root. Yet the past lingered. Valleys, lakes, and hills bore the scars of ice. Fossils remind us of extinct giants. Even as the forests spread, echoes of the Ice Age persisted. The transformation was both loss and renewal. Some species disappeared forever. Others evolved. Humans thrived in new ways. Life became diverse, layered, and interconnected. The Ice Age had ended, but its lessons remained. Adaptation was essential. Observation mattered. Resilience is defined as survival. The frozen past shaped the warm, green world that followed. The Ice Age was ending. The world was warming. Rivers swelled with meltwater. Forests spread over former plains. Humans faced a changing environment. They needed new strategies. The open steppe was shrinking. Herds of mammoths and bison were thinning. Hunting massive prey became riskier. Humans had to adapt or perish. Rivers became lifelines. Fresh water, fish, and fertile land drew people in. Settlements appeared along the banks. Small huts, simple but sturdy, provided shelter. Communities stayed longer in one place. Mobility became strategic, not constant. Hunting changed. Giant prey were scarce. Humans focused on smaller animals. Deer, boar, rabbits. Tracking skills became sharper. Patience and stealth replaced brute force. Arrows and bows emerged as essential tools. Distance hunting reduces the risk of injury. Tools evolved. Stone knives became finer. Bone needles allowed tailored clothing. Fishing hooks and traps multiplied food sources. Innovation accelerated as survival demanded it. Fire remained central. It warmed homes and cooked smaller game. It kept predators at bay. It became a social center, a place for learning. Around flames, knowledge was passed on. Hunting strategies, fire-making, and plant identification were taught. Agriculture began slowly. Humans observed plant cycles. They harvested seeds. They scattered them near settlements. The first hints of land management appeared. Food security increased. The reliance on migrating herds decreased. Social structures shifted. Bands grew into larger groups. Cooperation intensified. Division of labor became more apparent. Some hunted, some gathered, some made tools. Shared knowledge ensured survival. Clothing adapted. Forest dwellers faced less wind, but more rain. Layered furs gave way to more flexible garments. Boots and gloves allowed movement in softer, muddier terrain. Humans observed animal behavior to improve camouflage. Humans began to read the environment. Seasonal changes dictated movement and activity. Water levels, plant growth, and animal behavior guided decisions. The lessons of the Ice Age were still relevant. Observation, patience, and foresight were survival tools. By adapting, humans survived the transition. They thrived in the new landscape. Settlements grew near rivers and lakes. Small game and plant resources supported larger communities. Humans learned to shape the world, not just follow it. The Ice Age had ended, but the skills honed in frozen plains carried forward. Tracking, hunting, fire-making, and adaptation became the foundations of civilization. The green, warming world offered opportunity. Humans were ready. The giants of the Ice Age were fading. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, once rulers of the steppe, were disappearing. The world was warming. Grasslands shrank. Forests expanded. The habitats that had supported enormous herds were vanishing. Humans played a role. Skilled hunters, armed with spears and knowledge, targeted these massive creatures. A single hunt could feed an entire band. Bones show clear signs of human activity. Cut marks, cracked marrow, organized kill sites, all evidence of repeated hunting. Extinction didn't happen overnight. It came in waves. Some regions lost their giants earlier. Australia's massive marsupials disappeared long before the northern ice sheets melted. In North America, mammoths lingered while humans spread. By the time the Ice Age fully retreated, many species were gone. Climate change added pressure. As glaciers melted, temperatures rose. The steppe became fragmented. Food sources diminished. Herbivores struggled to survive in shrinking ranges. Predators that depended on these giants were impacted too. Dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, and cave lions faced starvation. The combination of humans and climate was devastating. Neither factor alone may have caused the full collapse, but together they tipped the balance. Species already stressed by habitat loss faced new threats. Population numbers fell, reproduction slowed, and extinction accelerated. Some giants clung on in isolation. Mammoths survived on Wrangel Island for thousands of years after mainland populations vanished. They became smaller, weaker versions of their ancestors. Eventually, even these survivors disappeared. But their long endurance tells a story of resilience. Evidence is scattered across continents. Frozen mammoths in Siberia preserve hair and flesh. Kill sites in North America show organized human hunting. In Europe, bison and cave bears were hunted to extinction. Each fossil tells a tale of survival and loss. Extinction waves reshaped ecosystems. Grasslands converted to forests faster without grazing herds. Predators adapted, migrated, or died out. The balance of life shifted permanently. Humans adapted alongside these changes. They turned to smaller game, fishing, and gathering. Their survival depended on flexibility and innovation. Tools, fire, and knowledge became more crucial than brute strength. The Ice Age giants live on only in memory. Fossils, frozen carcasses, and stories preserve them. Yet their absence defined the new world. Without enormous grazers, forests grew dense. Rivers and lakes flourished, and ecosystems evolved into the landscapes we recognize today. Extinction waves remind us of the delicate balance of life. Climate shifts and human influence can combine to reshape the planet. The giants vanished, but their legacy persists in bones, in soil, in genetic echoes carried by modern elephants and bison. The Ice Age may have ended, but its story of survival, struggle, and loss is etched forever into the earth. Even as the Ice Age giants were vanishing from most of the world, some held on. Isolated populations survived in pockets where humans and changing climates had less impact. Wrangel Island, far to the north, became one of the last refuges of the mammoth. These mammoths were smaller than their mainland relatives. Limited resources forced them to adapt. They lived in harsh conditions, facing cold winds, scarce food, and isolation. Yet, they endured for thousands of years, long after their cousins had vanished. Isolation had advantages. No large human populations hunted them intensively. Predators were scarce. The island offered a protected environment, a temporary sanctuary from extinction pressures elsewhere. But survival came with challenges. Small populations struggled with genetics. Inbreeding caused weaker offspring. Disease could spread faster. Food scarcity limited their numbers. Even without humans, extinction pressures persisted. Wrangel Island mammoths provide a unique glimpse into resilience. They show that life can cling on even in extreme isolation. They also reveal the fragility of survival. Without space, diversity, and abundant resources, even the strongest giants can fade. Similar cases existed elsewhere. Other isolated populations of bison, muskoxen, and smaller mammals persisted where humans and predators had limited access. These refuges were temporary safe havens, pockets of survival in a transforming world. Scientists study these survivors to understand extinction dynamics. How did some populations cling on? What factors caused the eventual collapse? DNA from Wrangel Island mammoths shows genetic degradation over centuries. Even survival islands could not prevent the ultimate loss of the species. The story of surviving giants is both hopeful and tragic. It's a testament to adaptability, endurance, and the limits of resilience. Life finds ways to endure, even in shrinking and hostile habitats. But it also illustrates that survival is never guaranteed. Wrangel Island mammoths are the last chapter of a long saga. They represent the end of the Pleistocene giants. From mammoths that once roamed vast steppe landscapes to tiny island herds, they connect us to a lost world. Their extinction left ecological gaps. The landscapes they shaped, grazed, and maintained began to change. Vegetation shifted. Predators lost their prey. Humans adapted to a world with fewer massive herbivores. Even in death, these surviving giants leave lessons. Isolation can extend survival, but it cannot stop broader ecological and environmental forces. Life persists as long as it can, but balance is fragile. Wrangel Island mammoths, frozen in time and memory, are a reminder. Even in the harshest environments, life struggles, survives, and eventually transforms. They were the final echoes of the Ice Age giants, living testaments to a world of scale, cold, and endurance. The Ice Age was ending, but their story still whispers across the frozen landscape, leaving traces of what once was. The Ice Age did not just cover the earth in white, it carved it. Glaciers were slow, but unstoppable. They ground down mountains. They scoured valleys. They reshaped continents. U-shaped valleys are one of the clearest signs. Unlike rivers, which carve narrow V-shaped paths, glaciers carve broad, deep troughs. Sheer walls rise on each side. Flat bottoms stretch wide. These valleys still define landscapes in Europe, North America, and beyond. Glacial erratics are another clue. Massive boulders, some bigger than houses, were left stranded far from their origin, carried hundreds of miles by moving ice. Dropped suddenly, when the glacier melted. They stand as silent monuments, testaments to the glacier's power. Lake basins also tell a story. The Great Lakes, for instance, were carved by ice, deep hollows filled with meltwater as glaciers receded. Smaller lakes, like the Finger Lakes, share the same story. Every basin, every depression, marks the glacier's passage. Rivers were reshaped too. Meltwater flowed in torrents, sometimes calm, sometimes catastrophic. The landscape was in motion, constantly changing. Sediment and silt were carried, deposited, and redistributed. Fertile plains formed. Valleys were widened. Mountains bear the scars as well. Ridges smoothed. Peaks polished. Glacial striations etched into rock surfaces. A record of slow, grinding movement over thousands of years. Even soil tells a story. Glacial deposits created loess plains in Europe, China, and North America. Fine dust carried by Ice Age winds. Dropped in thick layers, these soils now feed crops, support forests, and nourish rivers. The Ice Age reshaped not just the rocks, but the very ground beneath our feet. The weight of ice also pressed down on the crust of the earth. When the ice melted, the land slowly rebounded. Rivers adjusted. Shorelines shifted. Coastlines changed forever. Every glacier left a mark. Some are subtle. Some are dramatic. From jagged cliffs to polished rocks, from lakes to valleys, the ice sculpted a new world. Even today, these landscapes guide us. Humans follow valleys for travel. We settle near fertile plains and lakes. We fish in waters shaped by ice. We hike trails carved millennia ago. The Ice Age may be gone, but its fingerprints remain. Every U-shaped valley, erratic boulder, and lake basin tells a story. A story of slow, unstoppable change. A reminder of the forces that shaped the world we now call home. The earth beneath our feet is a frozen memory. It whispers of glaciers that moved, carved, and transformed. The land reshaped itself, and life adapted. The Ice Age is gone, but its mark is everywhere. The Ice Age left more than frozen valleys. It left life's foundation. Glaciers carried rocks, sand, and soil. They ground them into fine particles. When the ice melted, these sediments spread across the plains. Loess plains formed in China, Europe, and North America. Layers of fine dust are blown by the wind, deposited in thick blankets over land. These soils became fertile ground, the Earth's new lifeblood. Rivers, shaped by glacial meltwater, carried silt and minerals. They spread it far and wide. Floodplains became nutrient-rich, perfect for plants, perfect for animals. Glacial deposits created natural basins. These basins collected water, forming lakes, wetlands, and streams. Rivers followed new paths, guided by ice-sculpted landscapes. They meandered, flooded, and nourished the land. Every spring, meltwater brought fresh sediment. The soil renewed itself year after year. Early humans noticed this. They settled near rivers, fished, hunted, and gathered plants. The rivers fed them, literally and figuratively. Fertile soils from glaciers supported future agriculture. Wheat, barley, and other crops thrived where ice had once ruled. The dust, clay, and sand left behind enriched generations. Civilizations grew on this foundation. Without the Ice Age, some of these fertile lands might never have existed. Even small streams carried legacy. They shaped valleys, created wetlands, and connected ecosystems. Animals followed them. Humans followed them. Life moved in harmony with water and soil. Floodplains were unpredictable. Meltwater could burst banks, creating temporary chaos. But in the long run, floods brought renewal. Fresh silt, rich nutrients. Life adapted to the rhythm. The power of ice and water was immense. Mountains supplied sediments. Glaciers transported them. Rivers distributed them. Every grain of soil tells this story. Today, we still benefit. The soils under our crops, forests, and grasslands are gifts from a frozen past. Rivers we depend on were carved by glaciers and meltwater. Streams that seem ordinary today carry echoes of Ice Age torrents. Even in deserts far from ice, winds carried glacial dust. Sediment crossed continents. Deposited in places ice never reached. The Ice Age shaped the world in ways we cannot always see. Without glaciers, soils would be poorer, rivers would be straighter, narrower, and less fertile. Human civilization owes a debt to the Ice Age. It sculpted, ground, and deposited the raw materials for life. Fertile soils and river systems are the quiet legacy, silent, patient, and enduring. They feed life, shape landscapes, and guide human history. The Ice Age carved not just land, but opportunity. Every valley, every riverbed, every fertile plain is a story of ice and water working together. The Ice Age reshaped coastlines as much as mountains. Glaciers held back enormous amounts of water. When they melted, the seas began to rise. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Land bridges disappeared beneath the waves. Beringia, connecting Asia and North America, sank. Doggerland, linking Britain to mainland Europe, vanished. The paths humans and animals once used were gone. Migration routes disappeared beneath the sea. New coastlines appeared. Bays, estuaries, and inlets formed where rivers met the rising ocean. These were rich hunting grounds for humans. Shellfish, fish, and seabirds thrived. Humans learned to exploit this changing environment. Coastal flooding reshaped habitats. Plains became shallow seas. Forests disappeared beneath water. Yet marine life exploded in new zones. Tide pools, estuaries, and shallow bays became hotspots of abundance. Rising seas also changed currents. Ocean temperatures shifted. Fish and marine mammals migrated. Humans followed, learning the rhythms of tides and seasons. Some settlements were lost forever. Campsites, hunting grounds, even entire communities vanished. People had to move inland. Adaptation became crucial. Those who adjusted thrived. Humans became coastal experts. They built new tools for fishing. They learned to make boats, rafts, and nets. Shelters were adapted for wet, windy, and unstable shorelines. Coastal changes affected rivers too. Rivers that once flowed freely onto plains now met the rising sea. Deltas expanded. Floodplains shifted. Sediment deposited by rivers mixed with the incoming tide. This created fertile estuaries. Marine ecosystems became complex. Shellfish beds, fish nurseries, and waterfowl colonies developed. Humans tapped into these resources. Diet diversified. Communities stabilized near predictable food sources. Even islands appeared or grew larger. Rising seas isolated some populations. This created unique ecosystems. Mammoths, deer, and birds adapted to island life. Humans, too, adapted to island living. The coastline became a map of change. Every high tide, every storm surge reminded people of the Ice Age's legacy. The oceans were not passive. They shaped life, settlement, and survival. Today, we still see the marks. Submerged forests, old river channels, and underwater terraces tell the story. Modern maps hide them, but they exist beneath waves. Our ancestors witnessed and adapted to these changes. Coasts became new frontiers of life and opportunity. Rising seas were threats and gifts. They destroyed some land. They created new ones. Estuaries became the lifeblood of human survival. Shells, fish, and fertile waters supported the first settlers of a warming world. The Ice Age may be gone, but its influence on the coastlines remains. We walk, fish, and live along shores sculpted by melting glaciers. The ocean remembers, and we do too. The Ice Age didn't just freeze the land, it shaped the planet's climate for millennia. Massive glaciers altered air pressure. Cold sheets of ice pushed winds across continents. Storm patterns shifted in response. Ocean currents were rerouted. Cold water from melting glaciers flowed into the seas. This slowed or redirected warm currents. The Gulf Stream, the Atlantic Conveyor, all felt the weight of ice. Temperature patterns changed far from the ice sheets. Ice age cycles were not sudden. Glacial periods lasted tens of thousands of years. Interglacial warm periods followed. These repeated rhythms set long-term climate trends. Humans, plants, and animals adapted to these cycles. Atmospheric composition changed. CO2 levels rose and fell with ice growth and melting. Colder periods trapped carbon in the oceans. Warmer periods released it. This feedback loop shaped global weather. Winds carried dust from dry, frozen plains. Dust traveled thousands of miles. Deposits landed in oceans, fertilizing plankton. Plankton growth influenced the carbon cycle. Life on land and in the seas was connected to ice. The Ice Age also influenced rainfall. Glaciers created rain shadows. Some regions became deserts. Other regions saw expanded wetlands and lakes. River flows are adjusted to long-term climate patterns. The weight of ice sheets pressed down on the continents. Land rose slowly when ice melted, a process still happening today. Sea levels adjusted gradually. Coastlines shifted over centuries. Ocean and wind patterns responded in turn. Even tropical regions were affected. The Ice Age cooled the equatorial zones. Monsoons weakened or strengthened. Storm tracks shifted. Droughts and floods followed long-term trends, not random chance. These cycles shaped evolution. Animals adapted to cold or migrated. Forests expanded and contracted. Grasslands and tundra shifted in response. Humans learned to read these patterns to survive. Today, we feel echoes of this long-term influence. Ocean currents carry the memory of glacial melt. Wind and rainfall patterns still reflect Ice Age shaping. Climate systems remain connected across the globe. Even modern storms are influenced by ancient ice. The Ice Age left a blueprint. It taught the Earth how to balance heat, water, and air. Its cycles set the stage for the life that followed. Oceans, winds, and weather today still bear its fingerprints. We are living in a world sculpted by frozen giants. Understanding these patterns helps us today. We can predict climate shifts. We can prepare for droughts, floods, and storms. The Ice Age wasn't just a past event. It continues to whisper in every wind, wave, and rainfall. The Ice Age giants may be gone, but their legacy is everywhere. Some animals we see today are living echoes of that frozen era. Bison roam the plains of North America. Massive herds once grazed alongside mammoths. Today, smaller herds survive. Their behavior, migration patterns, and resilience reflect the pressures of Ice Age life. They adapted to survive cold winters, sparse food, and predators. Musk oxen persist in the Arctic tundra, shaggy, strong, and enduring. They resemble their ancestors from tens of thousands of years ago. Their thick coats, social herds, and grazing habits are lessons from a frozen past. These animals carry the memory of survival in extreme cold. Reindeer and caribou still migrate across northern landscapes. Their long treks trace ancient Ice Age pathways. Patterns established when glaciers dominated the land guide them even today. Humans once followed these herds. They provided food, clothing, and tools for survival. The paths of these animals shaped human migration and settlement patterns. Elephants, though modern, still echo mammoths. Genetic studies show traces of Ice Age adaptations, thicker hair, cold tolerance, and some behavioral traits may be remnants of their frozen cousins. In a way, every elephant carries a memory of the Ice Age. Many predators today also reflect Ice Age lessons. Wolves, descended from dire wolves, retain pack hunting strategies. Smaller cats inherited stalking and ambush skills perfected during glacial times. Even birds, like raptors, reflect hunting adaptations from thousands of years ago. This legacy is not just survival, it's adaptation and resilience. Animals learned to move, hunt, and breed in changing climates. Those lessons are visible in their instincts, migrations, and behaviors. Some species vanished, but their influence remains. The extinction of mammoths and saber-toothed cats reshaped ecosystems. Predators and herbivores adapted to new prey and landscapes. The food webs we see today are partly a product of Ice Age extinctions. Humans, too, were influenced. Our ancestors observed, hunted, and learned from these animals. Techniques for hunting, clothing, and even social organization were shaped by Ice Age fauna. Without mammoths, reindeer, or bison, human history might look very different. Even today, conservationists study Ice Age survivors. Understanding how bison and musk oxen endured extreme conditions informs modern efforts. Climate change, habitat loss, and human interference echo the pressures of the past. These animals are guides, reminding us how life adapts and persists. So, when we see a bison on a prairie, a musk ox in the Arctic, or a herd of reindeer crossing snowfields, we are looking at living history. We are seeing the ghosts of an Ice Age world. Their bodies, behaviors, and survival strategies carry lessons from a frozen era. The Ice Age may be over, but its living legacies walk among us every day. Humans of the Ice Age were survivors. Cold winds, long winters, and unpredictable food shaped every choice. Every step was a lesson in adaptation. Fire was more than warmth. It was protection from predators. It allowed cooking, which made food easier to digest. It brought people together at night. Stories were told around the fire. Knowledge was passed. Skills were shared. Tools were life. Sharp stone flakes cut meat and hide. Bone and antler became needles, hooks, and spear points. Humans observed the world. They refined tools based on what worked. Innovation was constant. Clothing protected against the cold. Furs are layered thick. Boots and gloves kept extremities alive. Every stitch mattered. Humans learned which animals provided the best materials. They mastered survival in frozen landscapes. Cooperation defined success. Hunting mammoths or bison required planning. Groups moved as one. Ambushes, traps, and coordinated attacks ensured survival. No one survived alone. Social bonds were essential. Migration shaped lives. Humans followed herds. They moved with the seasons. Land bridges allowed them to explore new continents. Ice sheets dictated where people could go. Adaptation was constant. Culture took root. Cave paintings told stories. Carvings and figurines held meaning. Rituals reinforced knowledge and connection. Humans learned to honor nature and its giants. Art, tools, and fire created identity. Observation shaped intelligence. Tracking animals required patience. Understanding behavior saved lives. Humans learned from predators, herbivores, and even the land itself. Every season taught lessons in survival. Innovation and creativity emerged from necessity. Shelters evolved from caves to mammoth bone huts. Fires were controlled and portable. Clothing adapted to the harshest conditions. Tools evolved from simple flakes to complex implements. Humans shaped the world as much as it shaped them. They cleared land, hunted strategically, and prepared for winters. They learned to manipulate fire, stone, and bone. They built the first frameworks for civilization. Even after the ice receded, lessons remained. Knowledge of fire, tools, and cooperation endured. Migration patterns informed settlement. Social bonds created the first communities. Skills honed in Ice Age survival became cultural foundations. Humans emerged resilient. The Ice Age forged endurance, intelligence, and ingenuity. It taught adaptation, patience, and collaboration. Every tool, every story, every journey reflects lessons from that frozen world. When we look at humanity today, we see echoes of that Ice Age survival. Our instincts, our problem solving, and even our curiosity were shaped by fire, frost, and giants. The ice did more than freeze the earth. It molded us. It built the foundations of human history. And in every skill, every bond, every spark of ingenuity, the Ice Age lives on. The Ice Age is gone, but it never really left. Its story is written in the land. Every valley, every river, every boulder tells its tale. Look at the U-shaped valleys of North America and Europe. They were carved by glaciers, slow but unstoppable. Their sheer walls and flat floors are monuments to ice and time. Scattered boulders, glacial erratics, sit where no mountain could have placed them. They travelled hundreds of miles through ice and were left behind like frozen footprints. The Great Lakes are legacies too. Filled by meltwater, shaped by glaciers, they hold a fifth of the world's fresh water. Their surfaces ripple with memory. The Finger Lakes, Superior, Michigan, Huron. Each basin tells the story of ice retreating. Even soils carry the mark of the Ice Age. Wind-blown dust settled in layers. Silt and stone deposited by glaciers feed farmlands today. Every harvest draws life from the frozen past. Rivers follow paths first traced by meltwater torrents. Streams, wetlands, and estuaries all echo Ice Age changes. Fossils remain. Mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and cave lions rest in frozen soil or deep caves. Their bones, tusks, and teeth are bridges to a world long vanished. Some are perfectly preserved in permafrost, revealing life millions of years ago. These are not just relics. They are evidence, memory, and story. Animals remind us too. Bison still roam the plains. Musk oxen endure in the Arctic tundra. Reindeer migrate along ancient paths. Even modern elephants carry echoes of mammoths in their blood. The Ice Age shaped their survival strategies, their size, their behavior. Humans carry the imprint as well. Fire, tools, cooperation, migration, and adaptation were forged in ice and frost. We learned endurance, ingenuity, and collaboration from frozen challenges. Cultural foundations, art, shelter, and storytelling were honed in that harsh world. Every innovation, every step forward traces back to Ice Age survival. The Ice Age taught us patience. It showed the power of slow change. Rivers carved, glaciers shifted, ecosystems adapted, life endured, and in that endurance, we find inspiration. Today, the Ice Age is calm. No mammoths roam, no glaciers dominate continents, yet its fingerprints remain. In landscapes, in soil, in rivers, and in species. We live in its legacy. It surrounds us, quietly, persistently. So pause, look around, see the rivers that trace ancient meltwater. Feel the soil that holds dust from winds of ice. Notice the valleys, the hills, the boulders. All are echoes of frozen time. The Ice Age may be gone, but its story is everywhere. In stone, in water, in life, and in us. And if we listen carefully, it still speaks. A whisper of endurance, adaptation, and survival. Remember that. Subscribe and join us as we uncover more stories written by time itself.